Hey everyone. Welcome to my channel, Morgan's Tales. I'm your host, sharing American folklore, thrilling mysteries, and all sorts of stories to keep you hooked. Today, I've got a special tale for you, the end of the Morgan legacy. So grab a seat, and let's dive into today's story. Somewhere deep in the Appalachian Mountains, near the base of White Pine Ridge, there lived a woman named Lily White. Nobody knew her real last name. Folks around those parts just called her Lily, or sometimes Miss Lily out of respect. She was a healer, a master of herbs and remedies, with a rosy complexion and sparkling eyes that seemed to light up the hollows. A real beauty with a heart to match. Lily ended up marrying Daniel Morgan, a doctor from the next village over. Daniel was the kind of guy everyone trusted. Folks would hike miles just to see him when they were sick. Back in those days, though, poor families couldn't afford a doctor's visit. Most physicians wouldn't even glance their way without cash up front. Forget about medicine. But Lily and Daniel, they were different. They'd trek up the ridge, gathering wild herbs, ginseng, goldenrod, whatever they could find, to brew remedies for folks too broke to even keep a fire going. They never asked for a dime, though they'd politely nudge for payment if someone could spare it. The other doctors in town, they'd snicker behind their backs. "Look at those fools," they'd say, "working for free, helping riffraff. What a couple of suckers." But Daniel and Lily didn't let it get to them. Daniel would just flash a quiet smile and say, "A doctor's heart shouldn't be in debt collection. People's lives matter more than a few coins. If my medicine can save someone, I'm not turning them away." Lily would nod right along, her gentle agreement sealing the deal. They were a team, through and through. One day, as Lily was sorting through her herb baskets, something crossed her mind. She turned to Daniel and said, "Hey hon, I was down at the market today and ran into Luke Dawson, you know, the guy who sells deer hides? Every time he picks up medicine from us, he says, 'Put it on my tab.' Don't you think it's about time he squared up? I mean, we let it slide for folks who can't pay, but Luke? He's not hurting for cash." Now, this Luke Dawson she was talking about wasn't some down-on-his-luck drifter. He was a hunter, one of the best in the valley. Every trip into the woods, he'd come back with a haul, deer, foxes, you name it. The fur coats he wore were worth a pretty penny, easily a few bucks apiece. But whenever he got banged up on a hunt and came to them for bandages or salves, he'd grab a big handful of their herbs, flash a grin, and say, "I didn't bring cash this time. Put it on my tab, I'll settle up later." Then he'd swagger off like he owned the place. Sure enough, right as they were talking, who shows up but Luke himself? "Hey Daniel brother," he called out, clutching his shoulder. "Took a nasty spill out there, left shoulders acting up again. Got any of that injury balm handy?" Daniel opened his mouth to say something, maybe ask about the money, but the words just wouldn't come. He sighed, scratched his head, and said, "Yeah, hang on. I'll grab some from the shed out back." True to form, Luke took the balm, clapped Daniel on the arm, and said, "Thanks man. Put it on my tab, all right? I'll catch you next time with the cash." And off he went, disappearing down the trail. Lily watched him go, her lips pursed tight. Once he was out of earshot, she turned to Daniel, hands on her hips. "Why didn't you say something? He's been racking up debt with us for months. Look, I get it, we're not in this to get rich, but he's taking everything we've got. We're up at dawn, climbing the ridge for those herbs, wearing ourselves out. And it's not just us, it's slowing down how many folks we can help. We can barely keep up as it is, and now with the baby on the way," she trailed off, rubbing her growing belly. Daniel knew she was right. He'd let the moment slip, and it gnawed at him. After a beat, he nodded. "All right, Lil, I'll handle it. I'm heading over to his place right now. If he pays up, great. If he dodges me with more excuses, I'll take it to Sheriff Lee to sort out. Fair's fair." Lily grabbed a coat from the hook by the door and draped it over his shoulders. "It's getting chilly out there, don't catch a cold. Be careful, okay?" "Don't worry," Daniel said, pulling her close for a quick hug. "I'll be back soon." With that, he stepped out into the crisp mountain air and made his way toward Luke Dawson's cabin. When he got there, Luke was out front, skinning a fresh catch, a big deer hide stretched out on a frame. He spotted Daniel coming and, quick as a fox, ducked inside, slamming the door shut. Daniel wasn't fooled, though. He marched right up and knocked. "Luke, I know you're in there. Look, Lily's pregnant, You've seen her, you know how it is. Winter's coming, and we don't even have coats to keep warm. We need that money you owe us, man. I'm not here to play games." After a long pause, Luke cracked the door open, leaning against the frame with a sheepish grin. "Ah, Daniel, buddy, you're killing me here. Bad timing, I swear. My wife's mama came by last week and cleaned out every cent we had, took it back to her folks' place. I'm flat broke right now. If you'd come by a couple weeks ago, I'd have hooked you up no problem. I feel awful knowing you're in a bind." Daniel frowned, crossing his arms. "Luke, we've been cutting you slack for months. Never hounded you once. But it's getting rough, winter's closing in, Lily's due soon, and we've got nothing. If she doesn't eat right, if we can't stay warm, she could get sick, real sick. You're a hunter, you've got pelts and meat to trade. Come on, man, don't leave us hanging." Luke waved a hand, brushing it off. "Sick? You too? Nah, you're tough as nails, best healers around. You'll be fine. Besides, it's not like I'm the only one who owes you. Go ask them other folks. Look, when my wife gets back with the cash, I'll square up, every penny, I promise. Just, not today, all right?" Daniel wasn't about to let it go that easy. "Luke, we're barely scraping by," he pleaded, his voice cracking. "I'm begging you, help us out here. I can't just watch Lily and the baby starve or freeze. Please." Luke scratched his beard, looking annoyed. "What's that supposed to mean? If something happens to your family, you gonna pin it on me? I didn't make you broke. Go talk to the others who owe you. Look, I told you, I don't have a dime right now. Quit whining, I don't want to hear it." With that, he grabbed Daniel by the arm and shoved him toward the door. Normally, Daniel would have just taken the hint and left, head hung low. But this time, something snapped. He dropped to his knees right there in the dirt, tears streaming down his face. "Luke, I'm begging you, man, I need this. For Lily, for the kid. Please." Luke froze, caught off guard by the sight of Daniel crying. It rattled him, but not enough to crack his stubborn streak. After a tense silence, he grumbled, "All right, fine, quit your bawling. I've heard tell of a spot, about 30 miles up the ridge, past the old logging trails. They say there's a cave up there, hidden deep. Folks call it Dead Man's Hollow. Supposedly, there's this rare weed growing inside, ghost grass, they call it. Hard to find, but it's worth a fortune if you can sell it. You and me, we head up there tomorrow. If we score some, you can have all the herbs you want, plenty to keep your family going. What do you say? Got the guts for it?" Daniel wiped his eyes, desperation clouding his judgment. He didn't stop to think it through, just nodded. "All right. Tomorrow, I'll go with you." As soon as Daniel turned and trudged off down the path, Luke's wife, Daisy June, stepped out from the back room. She'd been listening the whole time, her arms crossed tight. "Luke, you're a real piece of work, you know that? We've got cash stashed away, why didn't you just pay him? That poor woman's pregnant, and you're stringing them along like this." Luke shot her a cold glare. "What do you know about it, woman? They want to play the saints, helping every bum in the holler? Fine, I ain't footing their bill. Let's see how long they keep up the good guy act." He smirked, a mean edge to it. "This little trip? It's gonna settle things my way. You keep your mouth shut and stay out of it, hear me?" Daisy sighed, her shoulders slumping. "All right, I know," she muttered, but her heart wasn't in it. She'd been through her own hard times, had a kid of her own once, back when Luke was off hunting and she was left to fend for herself. She knew what it was like to go hungry, to shiver through a cold night with a baby on the way. She felt for Lily, deep down, but with Luke calling the shots, there wasn't much she could do. The next morning, Daniel geared up to leave. Before he stepped out, he pulled Lily aside. "Don't touch the well water while I'm gone, it's too cold, and I don't want you getting sick. I left some food ready in the kitchen. Aunt Vi's coming by later to check on you and the little one. Just rest up, all right? I'll be back soon as I can." Lily gripped his hand, worry creasing her brow. "Daniel, that mountain's a long haul, 30 miles, and the trails up there ain't easy. You've never gone that far before. Please, be careful." She cradled her belly with one arm, the other clutching their toddler's tiny hand as she waved him off. Daniel gave her a reassuring smile, then set out with Luke. They hiked all day and into the night, the wind howling through the pines. By the time the moon was high, they'd reached the deep wilderness, 30 miles from home, standing at the edge of Dead Man's Hollow. Daniel and Luke stood at the mouth of Dead Man's Hollow, peering into the shadows. Legend said the cave had been there forever, maybe since the first settlers got lost in these hills. They'd followed an old creek upstream, hoping it'd lead them to the spot. Neither knew if the place still held its secrets, but they were about to find out. As they poked around the entrance, a sharp, chilling scream cut through the air. Both men dropped low, hearts pounding, scanning the underbrush. The sound sent a shiver down their spines. It wasn't human, but it wasn't quite animal either. Steeling themselves, they crept toward the noise, pushing through a thick patch of brambles until they stumbled on a clearing. There, half buried under a rotted log, was a skeleton, human bones picked clean by time, one leg sticking out like a grim marker. Ahead, the cave yawned open, dark and waiting. "Daniel, come on," Luke whispered, edging forward. "That's gotta be it." Daniel nodded, though he wasn't so sure. He'd hiked these hills plenty, gathering herbs, but this place? It felt wrong, too quiet, too heavy. Still, he stuck close to Luke as they stepped inside. Luke, catching the unease on Daniel's face, chuckled. "What's the matter, scared? Ain't nothing but old bones and critters in here. That scream was probably just a coon or something. Might even bag us a cheap pelt while we're at it." He pressed deeper, his boots crunching on the rocky floor. Suddenly, a gust of wind roared through the tunnel, cold enough to sting their faces. The deeper they went, the darker it got, until they could barely see a hand in front of them. Luke fumbled with a match, striking it against his belt. The flame flared up, casting a flickering glow, and there, sprawled on the ground, was a white fox. Pure as snow, trembling hard, its belly swollen like it was about to give birth. Blood trickled from its left leg, staining the dirt. Luke's eyes lit up. "Well, hot damn, look at that. That pelt's worth a fortune." He grabbed a stick, raising it to finish the job. "Stop it." Daniel lunged forward, shoving Luke back. "She's hurt, and she's got kits in her. You can't just kill her, animal or not, it's a life." Luke scowled, lowering the stick. "Fine, you bleeding heart. I'll go find that ghost grass myself. But don't come crying to me when I claim it all." He stomped off into the shadows, leaving Daniel alone with the fox. Daniel crouched beside her, his voice soft. "Hey girl, easy now. I'm not here to hurt you. I'm a doctor, well, sort of. I can help you through this." He eased his herb basket off his shoulder and opened it, showing her the contents: dried leaves, roots, a little vial of salve. "See? I've got stuff to fix you up." The fox locked eyes with him, her gaze sharp and knowing. She stopped thrashing, letting out a faint whimper, almost like she understood. Daniel worked quick. First, he pulled out a thin needle he kept for emergencies, pricking her leg to numb the pain. Then he crushed some herbs with a rock, mixing them into a paste, and smeared it over her wound, wrapping it with a strip of cloth from his shirt. He ran a hand over her swollen belly, frowning. "This ain't gonna be easy, girl. You're in a tough spot. When I push, it's gonna hurt like hell, but you've gotta hang on. Those kits need to come out." The fox met his eyes again and gave a weak nod, burying her muzzle in the dirt like she was bracing herself. Daniel took a deep breath and pressed down, massaging her belly with steady hands. The fox whimpered, her body shaking, the sound echoing off the cave walls like a banshee's wail. Somewhere deeper in, Luke froze, muttering, "What in tarnation?" He turned back, but the noise spooked him too much to keep going. Back with the fox, Daniel kept at it. She went limp for a moment, her eyes glowing an eerie green in the matchlight, her muscles locking up. No, stay with me." Daniel grabbed another needle, jabbing it into a pressure point on her neck. 1, 2, 3 quick stabs, and she gasped, her chest heaving again. "There you go, breathe, girl. Now push, hard as you can. I'll pull." The fox strained, and with one last tug from Daniel, a tiny kit slid out, wet and wriggling. He scooped it up, laying it against her side. The mother fox lifted her head, staring at him with something like gratitude. Then, clear as day, she spoke, "Thank you, Daniel Morgan." Daniel stumbled back, tripping over his own feet. His legs gave out, pinning him to the ground as his mind raced. You talked. How do you know my name? And your leg, it's healing already. What are you? The fox's voice was calm, almost gentle. Don't be afraid. I'm no ordinary critter. I've roamed these mountains for 300 years, learning the old ways. This kit in my belly was my trial, and I came here chasing the ghost grass to ease the birth. But a wolf jumped me halfway, nearly finished me off. You saved us, kind stranger. I won't forget it. Tomorrow I'll repay you, I swear it. Before Daniel could blink, she dissolved into a wisp of green smoke, vanishing into the dark. Where she'd lain, a single stalk of ghost grass glowed faintly, its eerie light cutting through the gloom. Daniel stared at the spot where the white fox had vanished, his breath still shaky. That glowing stalk of ghost grass sat there, taunting him with its strange light. He'd never seen anything like it, pale green, almost shimmering, like it didn't belong in this world. Figuring it had to be the prize Luke was after, he grabbed a small trowel from his belt and carefully dug it up, roots and all, tucking it into his herb basket. Just then, Luke's voice echoed from deeper in the cave. Hey Daniel, what did you stuff in that bag of yours? He lumbered back, squinting in the dim light. Daniel didn't hesitate. Found something while I was helping that fox. She left it behind. Reckon it's that ghost grass you talked about. Let's head back to the village and see what it's worth. Luke's eyes flicked to the basket, a sly glint in them. Yeah, all right, he said, turning on his heel. Let's get out of here. They'd been gone 5 days by then. 5 long, grueling days since they left the holler. Back home, Lily's nerves were fraying. Her chest felt tight, like something awful was creeping closer. That afternoon, she dozed off during a rare quiet moment and woke from a nightmare. Daniel's voice, faint and far, whispering goodbye. She shook it off, but the dread clung to her like damp fog. By dusk, Aunt Vi came bursting through the door, her face pale as a ghost. Lily. Oh honey, it's bad, real bad, she hollered, out of breath. Lily's heart sank. She bolted upright, clutching the edge of the table. What's wrong, Aunt Vi? Tell me. Aunt Vi grabbed her hands, tears welling up. It's Daniel, sweetheart. He fell off a cliff. He's gone. The words hit like a hammer. Lily's knees buckled, and the room spun. No, that can't be, she gasped, then crumpled to the floor, out cold. When she came to, it was morning. Sunlight streamed through the cabin window, and Aunt Vi was hovering over her, cradling a tiny bundle. Lily, you're awake. Look here, it's a girl. You passed out last night, started bleeding something fierce, and this little one came right out on her own. Lily's head throbbed, but she reached for the baby, her voice trembling. Where's Daniel? Where's my husband? Aunt Vi hesitated, wiping her eyes. I didn't want to break it to you like that last night. Shouldn't have blurted it out. After you fainted, the shock must have brought her early. Daniel, oh honey, he's really gone. Good folks don't deserve this. She choked back a sob, dabbing her face with her apron. Lily didn't hear the rest. Ignoring the ache in her body, she forced herself off the bed. I've got to see him, I need to see Daniel. Barely steady, she stumbled out the door and down the path to the village burial shed. There, Luke was barking orders, overseeing Daniel's body being laid into a rough pine coffin. Lily staggered up, collapsing against it, her cries tearing through the quiet morning. She clung to the wood, refusing to let go, her sobs raw and broken. Luke stepped over, a sack of coins jingling in his hand. He dropped it at her feet with a thud. Lily, listen, I'm sorry it went down like this. We were up there hunting that ghost grass to help you folks out. Slipped on a ledge, and, well, he didn't make it. This here's what he owed you from before, plus a little extra from me. Daniel was a good man. Hope you and the kids make it through all right. Lily glared up at him, her grief twisting into rage. If you hadn't dragged him up that mountain for your damn grass, he'd still be here. You did this. She snatched the sack and hurled it at him, coins scattering across the dirt. Get out. I never want to see your face again. Luke bristled. You don't want the money? Fine, that's on you, not me. He turned and stormed off, leaving the villagers to gather around Lily, murmuring comforts. Easy now, Lily, one said, resting a hand on her shoulder. Don't waste your breath on the likes of him. You've got 2 little ones at home, gotta stay strong for them. After Daniel's passing, Lily held the family together alone. She opened a small apothecary in the cabin, mixing remedies for the village just like they'd always done. She raised the kids, her toddler and the newborn, playing both mother and father, though the weight of it all carved hollows under her eyes. Life was hard, but she never stopped helping the poor, giving out salves and teas to those who couldn't pay. The villagers pitched in where they could, fish from the creek, a spare quilt for the kids, grateful for her kindness. Oddly enough, her baby girl grew fast, faster than normal. Clothes she'd sewn one week were tight by the next. Lily chalked it up to mountain air and kept going, too busy to dwell on it. One day, while Lily was grinding herbs in the yard, a commotion stirred at the edge of her property. Daisy June, Luke's wife, came hobbling up, flanked by two burly farmhands dragging Luke between them. His head lolled, his face a sickly green, and his eyes were sunken with strange glowing rims. They hauled him to her doorstep, begging for help. Lily's first instinct was to turn them away. After all Luke had done, why should she lift a finger? But then she thought of Daniel. If he were here, he'd never let someone die, no matter who they were. With a tight jaw, she waved them in. Bring him inside. Let's see what's what. She knelt by Luke, pressing her fingers to his wrist. His pulse was weak, erratic. She studied his face, dark green shadows under his eyes, a faint sheen of sweat, and those eerie flecks in his irises. How long's he been like this? She asked, her voice clipped. This ain't no ordinary sickness. It's poison, slow and deep. It's already hit his vitals. Poison. Daisy's eyes widened, her hands wringing her apron. How'd that happen? He's been off for weeks. Can't sleep, says he hears foxes yowling every night. I never hear a thing, but he'll jump up, pacing and muttering. Past half-month, he's been thirstier than a mule in July. Won't touch clean water, just drinks this foul, rootless runoff seeping from the corner of our cellar. Says it's the only thing that stops the burning in his throat. After a sip, he calms down, but his mouth's blistered raw. Lily frowned, piecing it together. That cellar water's got no source. Stinks like rot too. Sounds like it's part of this mess. She stood, brushing off her hands. I'll mix him something to hold it off, but to flush this out for good, I need two rare plants. 1 century-old ginseng, the other's a golden lampweed, no roots or leaves. Can't wait around, I'm heading up the ridge now. Daisy nodded, clutching the remedy Lily handed her. Boil this down and make him drink it, Lily instructed, slinging her basket over her shoulder. I'll be back with the rest. The mountain was still slick from yesterday's downpour, the trails muddy and loose. Rock slides weren't uncommon this time of year, but Lily didn't have time to fret. A life was a life, even if it was Luke's. She climbed fast, her boots sinking into the earth, and after an hour, she spotted the golden lampweed glinting in a crevice. The ginseng, though? That was trickier. She scoured half the ridge, panting and sore, but came up empty. Exhausted, she slumped against a boulder to catch her breath. Before she could sit, a low rumble shook the ground. She glanced up, rocks tumbling down the slope, straight for her. She bolted, dodging behind a tree, but the cascade was too fast. Just as a boulder loomed overhead, a blur of white streaked in, a fox pure as snow, scooping her onto its back. It darted into the thick woods, carrying her to safety. Lily blinked, dazed, as the fox set her down. "Ma'am," it said, its voice clear and steady, "here's the ginseng you need." It nudged a gnarled root toward her with its snout. She stared, clutching her chest. "Wait, how'd you call me, ma'am?" "Me." The fox sat back, its eyes glinting. "Your husband, Daniel, saved me when I was birthing my kid up in Dead Man's Hollow. Before he died, he asked me and my little one to watch over you. I've been near ever since he passed, kept my promise." Lily's breath hitched. "When he died, you veretere?" "I heard he fell off a cliff. What really happened?" The fox's tail flicked. "There's more to it, ma'am. When I was hurt, your Daniel patched me up. I left him that ghost grass as thanks. But Luke," he turned rotten, "wanted it all for himself. He lured Daniel to a cliff's edge, waited till his guard was down, and kicked him over. By the time me and my kit got there, he was fading fast. Luke took the grass, sold it in the next town, then faked those scratches to play it off like an accident. Said Daniel slipped chasing herbs for you. He's had blood on his hands ever since. Lily's fists clenched, her nails digging into her palms. So Luke killed him, and tried to cover it up? And now he's poisoned. Did you do that too? The fox nodded. Yes, ma'am. He's a bad seed, plotted to burn your cabin down with you and the kids inside. Me and my kit couldn't let that stand. We rigged it so he'd pay, slowly. Tonight, if he don't get that cure, he's done for. Tears stung Lilys eyes. She thought of Daniel, his gentle hands, his stubborn kindness, and the kids he'd never see grow. Her heart ached, torn between vengeance and duty. After a long silence, she looked up at the fox. Daniel always said a healer's job ain't about who deserves it, it's about saving who you can. If he were here, he'd treat Luke, no question. I've got to do the same. The little fox tilted its head, then padded over to a bush, pulling out a century-old ginseng root with its teeth. You're a good woman, ma'am, a fine wife, mother, and healer. Take this. With the golden lamp and that brew, he'll pull through. It dropped the root into her basket and stepped back. You've got a doctor's heart. Lily took the ginseng and golden lamp weed back to the cabin, her steps heavy but sure. She ground them into a paste, mixed it with the earlier brew, and handed it to Daisy. Give him this, 3 doses, morning, noon and night. Should pull him through. Daisy followed her instructions to the letter. By the 3rd dose, Luke's color started creeping back, green fading to a sickly yellow, then something close to normal. His eyes cleared, the eerie glow gone. Daisy clutched his hand, beaming. Luke, you're awake. We owe Lily everything. If it weren't for her, I'd be a widow by now. We've got to thank her proper. Luke sat up, still weak, but his brow furrowed. As Daisy chattered, he caught a whiff of something, faint, musky, like fox fur. It hit him again, sharper this time, mixed with the same rancid stink as that cellar runoff he'd been guzzling. His gut twisted. Get him out of here, he rasped, waving a hand. I'm fine now, don't need her hovering. Lily caught the dismissal and turned to go, her face tight. Seeing Luke alive stirred up everything, the betrayal, Daniel's blood on his hands. She didn't say a word, just walked out, leaving Daisy stammering apologies. That night, Luke slipped out of bed, his mind racing. The more he thought on it, the more it gnawed at him, Lily knew. She had to. Why else would she save him, only to look at him like that? He figured she'd poisoned him first, then played the saint to cover it up. She's on to me, he muttered, grabbing a tin of kerosene from the shed. Gotta finish this before she talks. He crept toward Lily's cabin under the moonless sky, ready to douse the place and strike a match. But as he got close, shadows moved, folks from the village, out late, heading his way. Too many eyes. He cursed under his breath, ditched the tin in the bushes, and slunk home. Next time, he growled. Back at the cabin, Daisy met him at the door, her face puzzled. Wäret you run off too? You look like you seen a ghost. Luke froze mid-step, his head snapping up. There, at the kitchen table, sat 3 rough-looking strangers, chewing tobacco and laughing low. Who the hell are they? He hissed, jabbing a finger at them. I don't know those fellas. Never seen 'em in my life. Daisy blinked, glancing around. What are you on about? Ain't nobody here but you and me. You're talking crazy. Go lie down before you scare him half to this. From that night on, Luke couldn't shake it. Everywhere he went, down the trails, in the woods, even at home, strangers lurked. Hard-faced men with hollow eyes, watching him. He'd ask folks, you see that guy over there? They'd squint, shake their heads, and mutter about him losing his mind. Word spread quick, Luke Dawson had gone touched, poisoned in the head. Only the white fox and her kit knew the truth. That ghost grass Luke had stolen and sold? It carried a curse. For a good soul, it'd bring long life, a blessing from the mountain spirits. But for a black heart like his, it opened your eyes to the shadows, ghosts, wraiths, things that creep in the dark. They'd hound him, draw close, until he unraveled completely. No clean death, no quick end, just a slow, mad spiral. And that's how it went. Luke's days turned to nightmares, his nights to terror, until he was a shell, muttering at phantoms no one else could see. The village kept clear, and Daisy couldn't bear it no more. She left him to his fate. Meanwhile, Lily kept on. She raised her girls, tended the sick, and never turned away a soul in need. The folks of the holler looked after her in turn. Fish, firewood, whatever they could spare. Her kindness held strong, proof that good deeds echo back, even if it takes time. Luke's end? Well, that just showed the other side of the coin. Evil digs its own grave, sooner or later. So there's your tale, friends. The Morgan legacy didn't end with Daniel's fall. It lived on in Lily's hands. Good folks get their reward, and the wicked? They get what's coming. Ain't no dodging that reckoning. It's just a matter of when.
Be kind, do right, and the world will sort itself out.
That's the way of it. That's the end of this one, but stick around. Next up, we've got a yarn called The Loyal Son's Crooked Path. A fella stumbles into a mess of cheating hearts and dark deeds, all cause he wanted to keep his mama fed. You won't want to miss it.
Allrecht, folks, welcome back to Morgan's Tales.
If you enjoyed that last one, buckle up. Here's another gem from the backroads of American lore. This one's called The Loyal Son's Crooked Path. It's about a fella who stumbles into a tangle of sin and secrets, all cause he couldn't bear to see his mama go hungry.
Let's get to it.
Way back in the early days of Willow County, Tennessee, there lived a man named Sam Turner. His mama, Hannah Turner, was past 40 when she had him, late for a baby in those times. Right after Sam came into the world, his daddy took sick and passed on, leaving Hannah to raise the boy alone. She scraped by, working her fingers to the bone, and somehow pulled him through to manhood. Sam grew up with a heart full of gratitude. By the time he hit his 20s, Hannah was pushing 60, her hair gone silver, and he couldn't stand watching her toil. He wanted to take care of her, give her the rest she'd earned. Problem was, Sam wasn't much to look at. Folks summed him up in 4 words: rat-faced and scrawny. Small head, beady eyes, sharp chin, and brows so thin they barely showed. Standing still, he looked like a half-starved critter sizing up a henhouse. Now, Sam's soul was solid gold, but people didn't see past his face. Since he was a kid, he traipsed all over Willow County looking for work, chopping wood, tending fields, anything. No dice. Nobody'd hire him. They'd take one glance and turn him away. Ain't got no use for a fella like that, they'd mutter. So at 20, Sam was still empty-handed, no job, no prospects. Their little shack didn't have a scrap of land to farm. Hannah kept them afloat weaving baskets and mending clothes, her hands trembling as she worked. Sam watched her gray hair catch the lamplight, her back bent from years of strain, and it cut him deep. Then one winter, she pushed too hard. Her eyes went cloudy, then blind. Couldn't thread a needle or see the road ahead. Just like that, they were stuck, eating through what little they had stashed away. A few days later, the pantry hit rock bottom. No flour, no salt, nothing. Sam couldn't take it no more. His mama starving? That wasn't gonna happen. He made up his mind, dark as it was, and dropped to his knees in front of her. "Mama," he said, voice low, "you've busted your back raising me. Should have been living easy years ago. But with this ugly mug of mine, I can't get hired nowhere, not in this county, not in the whole dang state. We're out of options. I ain't proud of it, but I've got to do something dirty to keep us going. Just figured I'd tell you first, for I crossed that line." Hannah reached out, groping for his hand, her face creased with worry. She started to protest, but Sam cut in.
"I know it ain't right, Mama.
I ain't no saint. But I'm a man now, and if I can't look after you, I might as well be dead. What kind of son lets his own mother waste away?" His words hung heavy. Hannah knew her boy wasn't a bad seed, not deep down. This wasn't greed or spite, it was love driving him to the edge. She couldn't talk him out of it. How do you argue with a heart breaking for you? All she could do was sigh, long and weary. "Be careful, Sam," she whispered.
"That's all I ask."
See, Sam wasn't just some clumsy dreamer. Growing up rough had taught him a trick or two. He'd picked up a knack for moving quiet, climbing trees, scaling walls, quick as a cat. Never used it for much till now, but with Hannah blind and the pantry bare, he figured it was time to cash in. He'd turn thief, a shadow slipping over rooftops, to put food on their table. But before he set out, Sam mulled it over. "If I rob folks blind, take everything they've sweated for, I'm no better than a vulture," he thought. "Ruin a family just to save mine?
That's us and he can't carry."
So he set himself a code: only take what he needed, 1 sack of grain, A couple bucks, never more. Enough to keep Hannah fed without breaking someone else's back. With that, he steeled himself for the crooked path ahead. Sam stuck to his word. By night, he'd slip out of the shack, a shadow against the Tennessee hills, scaling fences and shimmying up drain pipes. He hit barns and back porches, quick and quiet, taking just enough, a sack of cornmeal here, a jar of preserves there.
Never cleaned a place out. Never left folks desperate.
The ones he stole from noticed, sure, but they'd shrug it off. Least he's got some decency, they'd grumble, and let it slide. Sam was too slick to get caught, left no tracks, no clues. Over time, folks started whispering about the Willow Wraith, a ghost who raided just enough to get by. He'd been at it a while, laying low between jobs. But one lean week, the shack's pantry ran dry again, couldn't even scrape together a biscuit. Sam remembered overhearing talk at the market about a big spread just outside town, the Baxter place. Rich folks, they said, hogs, chickens, a cellar stuffed with goods.
Sounded like a goldmine.
He decided to hit it that night, under cover of dark. As dusk settled, Sam headed out, cutting through the woods toward the Baxter farm. On his way, he crossed paths with an old-timer Jake Ironjaw Malone, a grizzled fortune-teller who roamed Willow County with a deck of cards and a sharp tongue. Their eyes locked, and Jake grabbed Sam's arm, his grip like a vice. "Well, I'll be damned," he barked. "You got the nerve to strut around in broad daylight, scoping out marks? I ought to drag you straight to the sheriff." Sam's stomach dropped. He squirmed, but Jake's hold didn't budge. Panicked, he let the old man pull him off the trail into a quiet thicket. Then Jake let go, cackling like a crow. "Relax, boy, I'm just yanking your chain." He doubled over, slapping his knee. Sam exhaled, a shaky laugh escaping him. Wiping sweat from his brow, he tipped his hat.
"You got me good, mister."
"How about I buy you a cup at the tea shack? Maybe you can read my future, tell me what's coming down the pike." They ambled over to a rickety roadside joint, settling at a wobbly table with 2 mugs of bitter brew. Jake squinted at Sam, sizing him up like a butcher eyeing a hog. After a long sip, he leaned back, his voice gravelly. "Well, shoot, son, you're a rare one. Got a heart big as a barn, loyal to your kin, and a streak of honor a mile wide. Shame about that weasel face of yours, throws folks off. But listen here, I see trouble brewing. You're dancing on a razor's edge, and there's a mean cuss waiting to trip you up. Take an old man's advice, stay clear of the Baxter spread. Quit this thieving game, for it's too late." Sam nodded, polite as could be, but inside, his mind churned. Ain't got no other way to eat, he thought. If I'm doomed to starve, so be it, but I can't let Mama go down with me. She's suffered enough, raising a runt like me without a day of peace. Long as she's breathing, I'll keep this up. Once she's gone, I can rot for all I care. He kept his trap shut about that though, just swapped a few more words with Jake, paid for the tea, and said his goodbyes. Back home, he didn't breathe a word to Hannah about the fortune teller. No sense worrying her blind eyes with shadows of what might be. As night fell, he grabbed a pocket knife for luck, slipped into the dark, and made for the Baxter place, ready to test fate on his own terms. Sam reached the Baxter place under a pitch-black sky, the big house looming like a sleeping giant. He hopped the fence, landing soft in the yard, and crept to a side window. With a flick of his knife, he jimmied the latch and slid inside, quiet as a whisper. He started poking around, cupboards, a chest by the hearth, hunting for something small to swipe. Then came a noise, footsteps outside. Sam froze, heart hammering, and dove under the nearest bed just as the door creaked open. He wedged himself flat against the floorboards, holding his breath. A woman stepped in, Mrs. Clara Baxter, he reckoned, judging by her fancy silk dress. She perched on the bed's edge, not lying down, just sitting there like she was waiting for someone. Sam cursed his luck, trapped, no way out, and the minutes dragging like hours. 2 sharp knocks rattled the door. Clara sprang up, smoothing her skirts, and hurried to open it. A man strode in, tall, slick-haired, reeking of cologne. Sam peeked from his hiding spot and caught their flustered fumbling, arms tangled, lips locked, tumbling onto the mattress. The bed frame groaned above him, springs squeaking with every move. He grit his teeth, stuck there like a rat in a trap, waiting for the storm to pass. Finally, they stilled.
Claras voice gut trug se kviet. lo enturgent.
You've got to make up your mind, Tom.
Ivy got a waiting packet here.
No more stalling, we're running out of time. Tom chuckled, smooth as snake oil. Don't you worry, darling. I've got a boat ready down at the river. Soon as your husband stumbles home, we'll be gone, sailing off to be man and wife for good. You'll be happy, I swear it. They laughed, then started up again, whispering sweet nothings. Sam's stomach turned. Adulterers, he thought, bile rising. Ain't no honor in this. But before he could stew on it, another knock, louder, sloppier, hit the door. Clara bolted upright, brushing her hair back, and opened it. In lurched Mr. Baxter himself, big as a bear, stinking of whiskey, and drunk as a skunk. He staggered to the bed and collapsed, out cold in seconds. Clara waved into the dark. Tom slipped back in, silent as a shadow, and Sam's gut sank. Something bad was coming. He peeked out. Tom held a rope, looping it tight, while Clara climbed atop her husband, pinning him down. Tom slid the cord around Baxter's neck and pulled, the big man's snores choking off into gurgles. They were gonna kill him, right then and there. Sam couldn't sit still for that. He scrambled out from under the bed, knife in hand, and lunged. With one swift jab, he drove the blade into Tom's shoulder, not deep enough to kill, just to stop him. Tom yelped, dropping the rope, and Clara screamed, her eyes rolling back as she fainted dead away. The cord loosened, and Baxter coughed, still alive, blinking groggily at the chaos. He rolled off the bed, saw Sam, and dropped to his knees. They were gonna do me in, those damned snakes.
You savet my hide, stranger.
Who are you?
Where'd you come from?
Sam helped him up, swallowing hard. Name's Sam Turner, folks call me the Willow Wraith.
I snuck in here to nicht, meaning to lift a little something.
Ain't proud of it, but I saw what they were up to and couldn't let it happen. Had to step in. He laid it all out, why he was there, how he'd stumbled into their dirty scheme, the whole mess. I ain't one to judge, but if you can keep this quiet, I'd be mighty obliged, Mr. Baxter. Baxter laughed, a big booming sound that shook the room. Well, I'll be a thief with a conscience. He rummaged in a drawer, pulled out a few silver dollars, and pressed them into Sam's hand. Take this, son, a small thanks. Can't repay you proper now, but I owe you big. Get outta here, for she wakes up. He nodded at Clara, still sprawled on the floor. Sam hesitated, then pocketed the cash. He was halfway out when Clara groaned, stirring. Quick as a flash, Baxter grabbed his own knife from his belt, dashed to the bed, and plunged it into Tom's chest, finished him off before Sam could blink. Then he stabbed Clara too, swift and cold, sending her to join her lover in the grave. Sam froze, stunned. Baxter caught his eye and shrugged.
Kent led wok after this.
Adultery's one thing, murder's another. They brought it on themselves. Sam couldn't argue that, but the blood on the floor left a sour taste. He slipped out, scaling the wall and vanishing into the night. Sam melted into the shadows, leaving the Baxter place behind as fast as his legs could carry him. Back inside, Mr. Baxter stood over the bodies, Clara and Tom, blood pooling under them like spilled wine. He didn't waste a second. Stepping to the window, he let out a holler that could wake the dead. Help! Somebody, get over here quick. Neighbors came running, lanterns swinging, drawn by the racket. They piled into the bedroom, gaping at the scene, Baxter, wild-eyed and whiskey-sour, pointing at the corpses. Look at this mess, he roared. Caught these two sneaking around behind my back, cheating dogs. Tonight, they waited till I was drunk, tried to string me up in my own bed. Lucky I woke up in time, had to fight him off. It's a damn shame, but they got what was coming. The crowd murmured, nodding along. Caught him red-handed and paid the price, one said. Ain't no crime in defending yourself, Baxter. We'll back you up, let's go see the sheriff together. No one blinked at the story, adultery and a botched murder? That was justice in these parts, rough and ready. Baxter mopped his brow, playing the shaken husband, and the neighbors hauled the bodies off to square things with the law. Meanwhile, Sam hoofed it back to Willow County, slipping through the woods like a ghost. When he pushed open the shack's door, Hannah was still awake, her blind eyes staring into nothing. She turned her head at the sound of his boots, nose wrinkling.
Sam?
That you? "Lord boy, you smell like blood. What happened out there?" He couldn't hide it from her. Dropping to a chair, he spilled the whole tale. Sneaking into the Baxter place, hiding under the bed, the cheating pair plotting murder, and how he'd stepped in with his knife. "I didn't mean for nobody to die, Mama," he said, voice low. "Just wanted to stop him. But Baxter, he finished it, cut him both down cold. Gave me a few dollars and told me to scat. I ain't proud of it." Hannah listened, her hands clasped tight. When he finished, she muttered, "Lord have mercy," like a prayer, then sighed deep. "You went in there alone, Sam, and came out with 2 lives on your conscience, even if you didn't swing the blade. Hand me that knife." Sam pulled it from his pocket, pressing it into her palm. "No more carrying this," she said, firm as stone. "You've danced too close to killing once already. Don't tempt it again." Sam nodded, too worn out to argue. He was a dutiful son, and her word was law. Over the next few days, Baxter himself showed up at their door, all smiles and gratitude. "Saved my neck, Turner," he said, dropping off a sack of flour and a couple bucks. "Ken thank you enough." They swapped pleasantries, and from then on, the two struck up an odd sort of friendship. Baxter, the gruff farmer, and Sam, the scrappy thief who'd turned savior. But Sam's mind wouldn't settle. Word around town had it the monks at Golden Oak Church, just outside Willow County, were up to no good. He'd heard whispers of shady dealings, maybe a chance to swipe something worth a damn. One night, restless and curious, he decided to check it out. Sam waited till the clock struck 3 in the morning, the deadest hour, before slipping out to Golden Oak Church.
The old wooden steeple loomed against the starry sky, just beyond Willow County's edge.
He scaled the back wall, nimble as ever, and dropped into the churchyard, sticking to the shadows. Inside, he expected silence, prayers and pews, maybe a sleeping preacher. What he got was a whole different sermon. Crouching behind a stack of hymnals, Sam peeked into the main hall. There they were, 6 monks in faded robes, sitting cross-legged on the floor with a gang of roughnecks in dusty coats. Between them, a pile of loot glinted in the candlelight, coins, jewelry, a few fancy trinkets. They were splitting it up, passing handfuls back and forth like it was a poker game. One monk, bald as an egg, waved a sheaf of papers. "This here's the real haul," he grinned, slapping it on the table. "Official county writ, straight from the governor's desk. Worth more than gold if we play it right." A scar-faced robber laughed, pocketing some silver. "Heck, preacher, you'll be shedding that monk's hat soon, riding high with the big dogs." The group roared, slapping backs, while another monk chimed in, "Just make sure we get our cut first. Gotta keep the Lord's work funded." They divvied up the rest, then scattered, the robbers out the back, the monks to their bunks. Sam waited, still as stone, till the last snore rumbled through the hall. Then he crept out, silent as a ghost, and raided their stash. He swept up the silver coins, shiny dollars and dimes, tucked a couple small bags into his coat, and snagged that bundle of papers too. Didn't even glance at it, just bolted, scaling the wall and hightailing it home before dawn broke. Hannah was up when he slipped in, her ears sharp despite her blind eyes. "Back already?" she asked, voice soft. Sam dumped his haul on the table, peeling open the sacks. Silver gleamed, enough to keep them fed for months. Then he untied the papers, and froze. Stamps, seals, fancy script stared back at him, property of Governor Henry Slade. Official orders, signed and dated. "Mama," he said, voice tight, "this ain't just pocket change. I nabbed some county writ from those monks, bigwig stuff. If they trace it back, we're cooked. Ain't no hiding from the law with this." Hannah's hands fumbled to the table, brushing the papers. "Lord Sam, what you gotten into? That kind of trouble's a noose waiting to tighten. We don't need it, can't use it neither. Why not take it back? Do a good deed, wash some of this sin off your slate." Sam paced, rubbing his neck. "You're right, it's a hot potato. But I did this for us, Mama. If I get nabbed, it's bad enough, just me. Dragging you into it? That's worse. Trouble is, I don't even know where to return it. Governor's up in Nashville, miles off. How am I supposed to find him?" Hannah nodded slow, her mouth a thin line. "Fair point, son. Guess we'll sit on it for now, think it over." They let it drop, stashing the loot under a loose floorboard, but the weight of it hung over them like a storm cloud. A couple days later, Sam had business outside Willow County, picking up thread for Hannah's mending work. As he trudged along the dusty road, he spotted Mr. Baxter down by the riverbank, jawing with a fella on a flatboat. Sam hung back, waiting till Baxter stepped off the dock, then hollered, "Hey, Mr. Baxter. What brings you out this way?" Baxter turned, squinting, then grinned wide.
Sam Turner.
"Well, didn't expect to see you here." He clapped Sam on the shoulder, then sighed. "Been running myself ragged, chasing a mess for the county. Some lowlifes hit the governor's courier a while back, snatched a pile of official writs. Sheriff's breathing down my neck to track him down, and I'm out here sniffing for leads. What about you?" Sam's throat tightened, but he played it cool. "Those papers belong to Governor Slade, right?" Baxter nodded. "Yup, the man himself. You're a sharp one, Sam. Good head on your shoulders. If you're ever near the docks, poke around. Find a clue, and there's a reward in it, enough for a jug of whiskey and then some." He chuckled, then tipped his hat. "Got errands to run. Catch you later." Sam watched him go, his mind spinning. If I hand over those writs, I'm in hot water, he thought. But if I don't, and they nab the real thieves, these papers'll just rot under the floorboards, useless. Either way, I'm stuck. He kicked a rock down the road, wrestling with it all the way home. That night, he tossed and turned, the governor's seal burning a hole in his head. By morning, he'd had enough. "Dang it," he muttered, sitting up. "If I don't give him back, Slade's family could pay the price, caught in some political crossfire. I stole him with good intent, for mama, not spite. Even if the governor's a hard case, there's gotta be some justice left in the world. I'm doing it." He knelt by Hannah, laying it out. "Mama, I'm taking those papers back. Could be trouble, but it's the right thing." She listened, nodding slow, a faint smile tugging her lips. "Go on, son. I reckon you're on the straight path now." Sam bolted out, hunting for Baxter, but the man was nowhere in town. Figuring the river was his best shot, he hoofed it back to the docks alone. Spotting a flatboat tied up, he flagged down a wiry deckhand. This boat belonged to Governor Slade? The fella eyed him, suspicious. "Who's asking? What's your business?" "Name's Sam Turner," he said, standing tall. "Got something big, real urgent, for the governor. Tell him quick, please." The deckhand shrugged, ducking below deck. A minute later, he waved Sam aboard, leading him to a cabin where a broad-shouldered man sat, papers strewn across a table. Sam bowed his head a touch. "Sir, you Governor Slade?" The man looked up, sharp eyes boring into him. "That's me, Henry Slade, in the flesh. Who are you, boy?" Sam swallowed. "Sir, can we clear the room? I've got private business, something you'll want to hear." Slade hesitated, then waved off his crew. Once the door clicked shut, Sam pulled the bundle from his coat, holding it out with both hands. "This yours, Governor?" Slade snatched it, flipping through the pages. His face lit up, then hardened. "Where'd you get this? Speak now." Sam took a breath and spilled it, sneaking into Golden Oak Church, the monks and robbers, grabbing the loot on a whim. "Didn't know what I had till I got home, sir. My mama's blind, and we're dirt poor, been taking what I need to keep her fed. But these ain't mine to keep. Figured you'd want 'em back." Slade leaned back, stroking his chin. "Well, I'll be damned, a thief with a backbone. Sit down, son." He gestured to a chair, pouring Sam a slug of coffee from a tin pot. "Let's talk this out." Sam and Governor Slade were still jawing over coffee when a shout came from the deck. "Governor, Baxter's here, says it's urgent." Slade stashed the writs in a drawer and waved the door open. Mr. Baxter strode in, hat in hand, and froze when he saw Sam. "Turner? What in blazes are you doing here?" Sam stood, tipping his head. "Hey, Mr. Baxter. Just settling some business with the governor. What's got you running?" Baxter shook off his surprise and turned to Slade. "Been chasing leads all day, sir. Stopped by Golden Oak Church this morning, resting my boots under the wall when I spotted something sticking out of a crack. Pulled it out and wouldn't you know, half a torn writ, stamped with your name, Governor Henry Slade, official dispatch. Figured it's tied to that robbery, so I hightailed it here to check." He handed over the ragged paper, creased and dirty. Slade unfolded it, matching it to the bundle Sam had brought. "Fits like a glove," he said, nodding. "This proves you ain't spinning yarns, Turner." He turned to Baxter. "Fill him in, boy's been straight with me." Slade recounted Sam's tale: the church break-in, the monks and robbers, the stolen loot. Baxter's jaw dropped, then he grinned. "Well, I'll be a monkey's uncle. You're full of surprises, Sam." Sam shrugged, hands in his pockets. "Ain't proud of it, sir. I'm just a drifter trying to keep my head above water. Took a risk coming here. Didn't want to see your family caught in the crossfire over these papers. If you're fixing to lock me up, I'll take my licks. Just can't leave my mama high and dry." Baxter cut in, clapping Sam's shoulder. "Hold up, Sam, you're off the mark there. Those crooks ain't like you, murderers and firebugs, the lot of 'em. Real outlaws. You can't duck out now, helped us crack this wide open. Like the saying goes, one bad apple don't spoil the whole barrel. You're in too deep to walk away." Sam hung his head, thinking it over. "Reckon you're right, Mr. Baxter. Stole fair and square, broke the law, no denying it. If there's a price, I'll pay it. Just worried about Mama, she's got no one else." Slade tapped his fingers on the desk, then smiled, a rare crack in his stern face. "Ease up, son. I'll write you a letter, pardon for your trouble. Take it to the sheriff, he won't touch you. Fact is, you've done me a solid." He grabbed a pen, scribbled a note, and sealed it with wax. Then he fished out $20 silver from a lockbox and slid them over. "Reward for your grit. Don't spend it all in one saloon." Baxter grinned. "Come on, Sam, let's round up those church rats." They marched out, Slade's letter tucked in Sam's coat, and rode straight for Golden Oak Church. By noon, they'd hauled in every last monk, bald heads and all. The ringleader tried denying it, but Sam stepped up, laying out the whole scene he'd witnessed. The evidence piled high, stolen goods, that torn writ, and the monks caved, spilling names and hideouts of their robber pals. Baxter took charge, leading a posse to sweep the county. Within days, they'd nabbed the whole gang, thieves, cutthroats, the works. For busting the case, Baxter got a shiny new badge, promoted to deputy. Sam, with Slade's letter in hand, walked free. The sheriff called him in though, wagging a finger. "No more funny business, Turner. Keep your nose clean, or this pardon won't save you twice." Sam tipped his hat and left the office, a weight off his chest. As he crossed the old Taiping Bridge on his way home, he spotted a gray-haired man sobbing by the river, cradling a drenched girl in his arms. Sam hurried over. "What's wrong, old-timer?" The man looked up, tears cutting tracks through his weathered face. "Name's Old Man Tate. This here's my daughter, only kin I got left. Her mama passed last week, and we couldn't afford a proper burial. Borrowed $10 from Silas Reed, that skinflint lender. Said we had a year to pay, but he saw my girl's pretty face and wanted her for a mistress. Kept hounding us, till she tried drowning herself in the river. I pulled her out just in time, but $10 for her life? It's tearing me apart." Sam's heart sank. He dug into his coat, pulled out 10 of Slade's silver dollars, and pressed them into Tate's hand. "Here, take this, no need to fret no more. Pay off Reed, and if he comes sniffing around again, tell him the Willow Wraith'll pay him a visit. He'll back off quick." Tate's daughter dropped to her knees, sobbing thanks, but Sam waved them up. "Ain't nothing, y'all take care now." He tipped his hat and walked off, leaving them staring after him. Sam made it home, kicking dust off his boots as he stepped inside. Hannah was waiting, her blind eyes turned toward the door. He sank into a chair and spilled the day's tale, returning the writs, facing the governor, helping Old Man Tate by the river. Hannah listened, her mouth twitching into a surprised smile. She reached for him, patting his arm. "Boy, you've grown some whiskers out there, rougher but still my Sam." She chuckled, relieved he'd come back in one piece. 4 days later, Sam stuck close to the shack, keeping Hannah company. They'd just finished a simple lunch, cornbread and beans, when a knock rattled the door. Old Man Tate stood there, his daughter beside him, both scrubbed clean and beaming. "Turner," Tate called, stepping in. "We owe you our lives. Came to say thanks proper." They bowed low, but Sam waved them off, flustered. Ain't no need for that, get up folks. Tate straightened, then cleared his throat. Noticed you're still a bachelor, Sam. My girl here, she's a good one. Thought maybe she could repay you by joining your family. What do you say? Sam's face went red as a beet. Whoa, hold on now, that's mighty kind, but I can't take her up on it. Y'all were in a bind, I just lent a hand. Marrying her cause of that? Feels like I'd be cashing in on your trouble, and that ain't right. Truth was, he had another reason he kept mum. She was a looker, no doubt, with bright eyes and a sweet smile. But Sam? He was still a thief at heart, no steady trade, and the sheriff's warning rang fresh. Ain't got 2 nickels to rub together, he thought. How am I supposed to keep a wife when I can't keep myself? Tate pressed, and Hannah chimed in, she'd be lucky to have you, son, but Sam held firm. No sir, I'm grateful, but it's a no-go. Tate's daughter, Ellie her name was, crossed her arms, a spark in her eye. Fine, you won't marry me, that's your call. But I ain't letting this debt slide. From now on, your mama's my mama too. I'll be around, helping out, and you can't stop me. Sure enough, Ellie started showing up every few days. She'd haul laundry to the creek, chatter with Hannah, even cook supper, whipping up gravy and biscuits like she owned the place. Sam couldn't help but grin, though it threw him off kilter. The reward silver from Slade was dwindling fast, and with no new jobs, he felt the pinch. One afternoon, restless, he wandered into town, pacing the streets till he nearly turned back. Then he bumped smack into Jake Ironjaw Malone, the fortune teller, leaning on a lamppost. Well, if it ain't the Wraith himself. Jake crowed, dragging Sam to the tea shack. Over steaming mugs, he studied Sam's face, then clapped his hands. Hot dang boy, your luck's turned. That mug of yours is glowing. Been piling up good deeds, I reckon. Mark my words, something big's coming, tomorrow at the latest. You won't go hungry no more. Sam paid for the tea, skeptical but hopeful, and relayed it to Hannah. They laughed it off, half believing, and slept with a flicker of cheer. Next morning, a pounding on the door jolted them awake.
Sam Turner.
Baxter's voice boomed. Open up, I've got news. They traded a look. Could Jake be right? Sam swung the door wide, and Baxter burst in, grinning ear to ear.
Congrats, Sam.
Got a letter from Governor Slade. Sent it straight to the county boss. Says you're sharp, handy with a fight, and worth a damn. Recommended you for a job at the sheriff's office. Big man signed off, and since we're pals, they sent me to fetch you. Let's go sign you up. Hannah's jaw dropped, then she laughed, tears brimming.
Sam blinked, stunned.
A real gig, steady pay, honest work. Deputy's tough, he thought, but it's better than stealing. I'm in. He swapped his patched shirt for a clean one, followed Baxter to the sheriff's office, and signed on the dotted line. From then on, Sam was a lawman, drawing a paycheck every month. Hannah didn't want for nothing, and Ellie kept coming round, her loyalty unshaken. After a while, Sam and Tate hashed it out, picked a wedding day and made it official. The ceremony was a ruckus, fiddles wailing, folks stomping, Ellie walking in with flowers in her hair. She and Sam settled into a happy life, and Hannah? She grinned till her last breath at 80, finally tasting the peace she'd earned. That's the tale, folks. Sam Turner took a crooked path but found his way. Proof good hearts get their due, even if it's late. Liked it? Drop a holler below, and we'll catch you next time on Morgan's Tales.